Are you into the secret histories of exorcisms, Christmas massacres, killdozers, and concert disasters?
How about haunted mansions, the Philadelphia experiment, the Dorm of Death, or candy corn?
Then you're gonna love Ghost Town, a hilarious and sometimes not so hilarious twice-weekly podcast.
On Wednesdays, we discuss the secret history of an abandoned, unexplored, haunted, or mysterious place from anywhere in the world.
And on Fridays, we cover an amazing historical failure from any time in history.
Ghost Town is 100% safe and legal. We guarantee it.
It's also fun, spooky, and can contain a riot,
a massacre,
a murder,
or an arch deluxe.
I'm Rebecca Lieb.
I'm Jason Horton.
And this is Ghost Town. And you can find Ghost Town wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome to Reverie True Crime. Today's episode is more on the creepy side. Strange occurrences, suspicious deaths, and urban legends of a mysterious lake called Lake Lanier, and it's located in Georgia. So let's dive right into this. Before we get into the suspicious and weird occurrences at Lake Lanier in Georgia, let's go through some fast facts. Lake Sidney Lanier is likewise known as Lake Lanier, and it's a lake in the northern part of Georgia. It's 60 miles from Atlanta. Over 600 miles of shoreline borders these 5 counties: Hall, Dawson, Gwinnett, Lumpkin, and Forsyth. This makes Lake Lanier the biggest lake in Georgia. When the Buford Dam on the Chattahoochee River was complete in 1956, Lake Lanier was created. It took 5 years for the body of water to fill its anticipated water level, and the U.S. government bought more than 50,000 acres of land on the countryside. This would go on to displace 250-plus families, 6 churches, 15 businesses, and relocated about 20 cemeteries. This lake covers 59 square miles of water and 692 miles of shoreline when it's at its normal level. It was christened Lake Lanier for an American poet named Sidney Lanier. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers work it, and they made it to control floods and the supply of water. The Georgia Department of Natural Resources and local law enforcement patrol Lake Lanier. Georgia, Alabama, and Florida do have all rights to the lake since Lake Lanier serves rivers that goes across those states. Atlanta has swiftly expanded its suburban neighborhoods, which has caused the water to surge consumption by the private homeowners for lawns and gardens. So many buildings and roads were absolutely flooded while Lake Lanier was being made. These are just some basics to get us started. So, what's the cause of people believing that Lake Lanier is haunted? Well, in the 1950s, when the lake came to be, numerous grave sites were unearthed, which led people to believe Lake Lanier is haunted, sinister, possibly even cursed. So many towns were affected by the lake overtaking them because it caused a whole underwater graveyard of towns to sit at the bottom of the lake. So basically, you've got literal roads, walls, houses that are still intact, like a literal ghost town in this water. There most certainly seems to be something unnerving going on in these waters. Many people have vanished in this lake, never to be found again. The Lanier Lake is 80 to 100 feet deep when it's at its deepest, which would absolutely make searching problematic. However, if you talk to the locals, they firmly believe that Lake Lanier is sinister and it's not uncommon knowledge. Despite the tales of this mysterious lake, it's still an extremely popular one that people visit during the summer. Let's set aside for a moment the suspicions that this lake could possibly be haunted or cursed. The fact of the matter is, Lake Lanier is one of the United States' deadliest lakes. Since the mid-1990s, there have been reports of well over 160 deaths on this lake, and this is according to the Department of Natural Resources statistics. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution even indicated that a projected 8 million tourists decide to go explore the lake mostly during the summer. Newsweek.com listed all of the deaths plus reports of missing people just from 2019 at Lake Lanier. The 9th of May 2019, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution said that 2 guys were on a boat and they were unaccounted for after their boat crashed. One of the men on the boat was retrieved, 59-year-old Branislav Prazik, but the second male was never found. The 29th of May, 2019, still sourcing from Newsweek and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, 2 men lost their lives when they drowned in the lake that weekend. 2 men drowned and both deaths were not related to each other. It's common that when people go out to the lake and drink too much that it can result in fatal accidental drowning. However, in both of these men's deaths, it seems that those things were not the cause. 30th of June, 2019, the Associated Press reported that Corey Brown, only 28 years old, jumped into Lake Lanier to save his friend. When Corey jumped into the water, he vanished. Sonar devices and a plane were used in the search. They both turned up empty-handed. In July of 2019, according to the Newsweek article, there had been no deaths or missing people that month. So that's a lot of 2019 thus far. In October of 2017, Buck Buchanan, who would frequently dive in the lake, told WGCL-TV about his experiences as a diver in these waters. Buck stated, quote, "You reach out into the dark and you feel an arm or a leg and it doesn't move. That's creepy." End quote. On Twitter, someone said, quote, "Georgia built Lake Lanier over a whole town and a few cemeteries. Didn't even move the graves. That's why that shit haunted." End quote. Since the grave sites were unearthed, there's more than likely corpses from there that are just floating throughout that whole body of water. Creepy, right? The Twitter post about Lake Lanier and posts from people that live there make really valid points, and they're really hilarious doing it. Nevertheless, points are made. One user said, "They're going to make a horror movie called Lake Lanier one day." While another person said, "I live on Lake Lanier, so, am I supposed to just yeet myself out of there, or..." Also, we been knew it was haunted. The graveyard of the town under the lake is right behind my dad's house. I'm still sourcing Newsweek.com, and as always, my sources will be in the show notes. But the author of this article brought up something that I now have to dig into. One of the pretty major concerns is the Lady of the Lake. She's a ghost who people say stroll up and down the Dawson Highway Bridge. There's also another ghost, and her name is Agnes. There are clashing stories about Agnes. Some say that she hung herself at a university. Others claim that she drowned. There's another story which may not be directly related to the lake itself, since the lake wasn't actually created yet, but these people may just as well be haunting the area. It allegedly happened in 1903 when 88 people perished in an accident, according to the Gainesville Times. So it's possible their spirits still hang around that area. People in the comment section of the Newsweek article are giving them absolute hell for saying that there were over 600 deaths in the lake in 2017, saying that that's impossible. Some say that there are maybe 15 a year. CBS 46 reported that ever since the lake was created, there have been 675 estimated deaths, and not all of the bodies have been found. So maybe that's what Newsweek meant to say instead of being that number per year. Either way, there's a lot of deaths, and it does make for a more ghoulish story whether you believe it's haunted or not, right? So I don't live there. I've never visited there. So this is my first time to dive, for a lack of better words, into this Lake Lanier business. If you have a Lake Lanier story that you'd like me to talk about and for me to read on the podcast, please feel free to send me an email at reverytruecrime@gmail.com. That would be absolutely interesting to me, and I'm sure many others. So, something that truly gave me chills to think about was what I read on WSB TV's news article, where they talked to another diver named Richard Pickering. He's been to the bottom of the lake and back many times. He said, quote, "People think there's nothing down there. They think it's just rocks and mud. It's not. There's a full forest down there. It doesn't decompose. It doesn't rot. The limbs, everything is there. So when you're diving around this, you're diving into the middle of a forest." End quote. Can you imagine? Maybe it's just me, but thinking of swimming underwater in a creepy as hell forest and a ghost town is probably one of my worst nightmares that I didn't even have or think about prior to this. TravelNor.com wrote about Lake Lanier in 2019, essentially talking about the controversy of it all, the deaths, and missing people. It was Memorial Day weekend in 2019, and Reginald Terrell Whitehead, only 30 years old, fell off of his jet ski, and when he hit the water, that was it. Vanished. Never resurfaced. Maybe 24 hours before Reginald's tragic accident, a 61-year-old male named Michael Thompson, who resided in Gainesville, drowned while he was by a boat dock. The 28th of April, a 17-year-old child named Dante Lane was extracted from the water. According to Travel Noir, in 2019, after this incident, the report said he was in critical condition. This one might be more familiar to a lot of you. An 11-year-old named Kyle Glover lost his life to the lake due to a horrible jet ski accident, and some of you may remember this. Well, if not, let me try to jog your memories. Kyle Glover was the son of Tamika Foster. She was once married to the famous R&B singer Usher. This took place in 2012, and I remember so many reports about this, and I didn't know that it was Lake Lanier until I was researching this. So one Twitter user said, "Why do folks in Georgia still go to Lake Lanier? You gonna die, bro." Cry face emoji. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have been trying to do their part to try to lessen the numbers of boating accidents and to bring awareness to water safety. They've given a lot of drowning prevention tips that include using the buddy system while you're swimming, limiting how much alcohol you consume, and not to go venturing off into restricted areas. So according to this website called meaww.com, meaww.com, and 11alive.com, posted on June 14th and 15th of 2020, a teenager's body had been discovered after he was missing for a day. Gainesville Police Department, with the help of the Hall County Fire Department, the Department of Natural Resources, the Army Corps Engineers, Marine Rescue Units of Hall and Forsyth counties, and a group of 20 divers were sent to Lake Lanier, and they were trying to find missing 19-year-old Jesus Victoria Reynosa. They had been out there for hours looking when they finally found his body at 6 in the evening. By using a side scan sonar, eventually removing his body with a remote-operated submersible. Mark McKinnon with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources confirmed this. Sergeant Kevin Hallbrook, who is with the Gainesville Police Department, added to say that 2 people went swimming in Lake Lanier when both went underwater. The other body did resurface, and Jesus' body went undiscovered until the next day. They got in touch with the victim's family immediately when all this came to light. And Twitter was at it again with posts saying, "Why? Why does anyone want to swim in Lake Lanier is my question. There's a reason I affectionately call it Murder Lake." Another user posted, "Deadass, Lake Lanier must be haunted or some shit. I swear a person goes missing there every other week." 11alive.com reported over the 4th of July that just passed, some people ended up celebrating and then having tragedies. Reporting that the Georgia Department of Natural Resources let their boating stats be released for the 4th of July weekend. It shows that they had to respond to a few drownings and 1 boating fatality. On the website called onlyinyourstate.com, they wrote an article that was talking about how people who have almost drowned in the lake depicted their incidents as being pulled under the water or being held under the water without having any control over their own bodies. Today's episode is sponsored by Fix. Fix is an adult toy online store whose purpose is to share the most innovative and enjoyable adult toys. Whether for solo play or for mutual enjoyment, Fix has a variety of items to meet all needs. From vibrators to wands to clitoral stimulators, there are tons of items for you to explore. Sex is great, but sex is different for all people, which is why Fix does their best to have a match for everyone. So, what makes Fix products so great? They find people of all walks of life and sexual health experts to do extensive testing and reviews. If it's not a winner, they toss it. If their people love it, it's a definite go. Fix sources products that are sexy, sleek, but most importantly, safe for our bodies. Visit www.letsfix.com. That's LETSPHIX.com and use the code REVERIE to get a free gift with your order. That's REVERIE to get a free gift with your order. Shop letsfix.com today. Also, even more strange than all of these deaths that have been frequently occurring at Lake Lanier for decades, they're stories of weird phenomena and strange creatures. So I want to reference back to the lady on the lake. Allegedly, you can hear her moaning in the middle of the night around the lake. Witnesses say she doesn't have any hands, and for years and years, she's been appearing before people's eyes one minute, and the next, she's gone. So, who exactly is this mysterious lady of the lake? Where did she originate from? According to GwinnettCitizen.com, they explain who she is. In April of 1958, Susie Roberts began to lose control of her car, which resulted in her colliding into and off of the right brace of the Lanier Bridge on Dawsonville Highway. Her car settled in 90 feet of water that was on a vertical incline at the bottom of the bridge. Susie's car was entangled in the deadfall of sheared-off tree trunks that encompassed the Lake Lanier floor. In 1959, there was a discovery of Delia Mae Parker Young's body by a few divers, and it's believed that she was Susie Roberts' passenger during the accident. Susie's car and body were not located. At the bottom of the lake, there's virtually zero visibility. In November of 1990, Susie Roberts' car was found when there was some construction work happening on the new Lake Lanier Bridge. They were making an extension to the bridge, and the construction workers were combing the ground floor of the lake because they needed to set the groundwork for pillars, and that's when they discovered her car. But her corpse remains undiscovered. Now, another story involves a catfish. Not just any old catfish, but one that is said to be the equivalent in size to a 10-year-old. Maybe around 5 feet in height and weighing around 100 pounds. Yeah, that's a big catfish, and it probably does look rather odd. However, I have to be the party pooper on this one because when you look at the records of catfish that people have caught, they look like monsters. Some of them weigh over 120 pounds. But as we get into this, there's more to this story than meets the eye. There's another story about a chicken truck. The story goes that there was a chicken truck that ran off of the Thompson Bridge in the 1980s. Divers went down to examine the wreck and supposedly came across a huge catfish gulping down these chickens. Again, I have seen some pretty monstrous catfish that could, in all fairness, likely be capable of this. But it does make for an eerie story. However, this particular catfish tale is on Lake Lanier's own website. This is where the creepiness of the catfish comes into play. The claims are that there was a woman who was pregnant strolling along the shore of 6 Mile Creek, which flows into Lake Lanier. There was a ginormous catfish splish-splashing near the shoreline, and scared the lady so much that when she did have her baby, he had the same features as the catfish. Little, beady eyes, what was supposed to be the baby's mouth was a slit in his face, and he never sprouted a hair. His whole body stayed as sleek as a catfish's, also having pale gray skin and webbed feet and hands. This little child is known locally as Fishhead. The story goes that the child was bullied so much that he pulled away from society. He started to play by himself. He'd venture off into the woods alone, playing and fishing alongside the 6 Mile Creek, and interacting with the animals that not only inhabited the area, but learned to take him in as one of their own, identifying him as another animal when they learned how kind and gentle he was. His mom forced him to go back to school again, but every time that he went, he'd return home in tears from all of the harassment, and his mom told him that he'd never have to go back again. His mother ended up passing away when he was in his teen years, and he didn't have a dad or any kin to go to, so he chose to spend his life in the woods from there on out, right along 6 Mile Creek. He made his home in the rocks behind the arm of the lake, which is where the creek flows into Lake Lanier. People say that they see Fishhead sometimes, and there are tales that there was a monster living by the creek. So you have those people who always want to go explore and catch these creatures like Bigfoot and other cryptids, right? So there was this little group of people who thought they'd go to try to catch Fishhead, and if they caught him, they'd make people pay money to see him. A few people got in their boats on a mission to seize Fishhead. Supposedly, as they neared behind the lake arm, they heard a massive splash. These people were never seen again. The only signs of them was their wooden boat, which was covered in claw marks, indicating that some animal or creature of some kind grabbed the boat and flipped it over. That's the legend of Fishhead and the people who tried to catch him. What's more startling to me is all of the deaths on Lake Lanier, and it was reported that people who were murdered would either be thrown into the lake or laid at the shoreline. So what do you think about all of this? Could every single case just be a freak accident? And like I said before, if you have a story about Lake Lanier, let me know at reverytruecrime@gmail.com. Or you can post your story in the Facebook group, Reverie True Crime Podcast. Thank you guys for listening to this episode, and I will talk to you all soon. Stay away from Lake Lanier and please continue to social distance. We had a spike in numbers here, and I still just urge everyone not to go out unless you just have to. Order what you can online. Take every precaution necessary. I personally know family and friends who have tested positive for COVID and who have passed away from COVID. So I don't want to lose any of you. So do what you have to do and please don't be stubborn. I love you guys, and until next time, stay safe and healthy.